Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today let's try Mindbender X or Mindbender Extreme in an incline twist. You know, I did a shirt using Mindbender X and I did a gravity ice dye with that one. But I wanted to do an incline twist to see all of the colors that actually come out of Mindbender X. So I'm grabbing one side of the shirt, lifting it up off the table, and I'm gonna just begin to twist the shirt. I think that this design is one that really showcases color splits. So whenever I want to see what the cool color splits are in a color, I usually like to do an incline twist. Once I have the shirt twisted, I'm going to place it down inside of a piece of vinyl guttering. This shirt stretches almost the entire length of the guttering, but to make sure it doesn't slide out when I incline it, I'm going to take some kite string, tie a little bit to the end of the shirt, and then clip it to the end of my piece of vinyl guttering with the clip. So to get the most color splits out of a color, I like to try to apply the dye over the top of the ice, which you will sometimes see referred to as DOI, which means dye over ice. I just think that allows the color plenty of time to split before it actually starts to bond with the fabric. So to begin, I'm going to add a layer of ice to the top of the shirt. And I'm going to go ahead and apply the ice while the piece of vinyl guttering is laying flat on my table. I think it's a little easier to apply the ice that way, and then I'm going to incline it in a few minutes. For this shirt, I'm using up just some little piecemeal things of ice which I've gotten from Whole Foods whenever I bought refrigerated stuff. So a lot of this ice is kind of in pretty large chunks. I'm going to fill in around the large chunks with some smaller pieces of ice. To incline the shirt, I'm going to take a plastic tote that has pretty tall sides, place one end of the vinyl guttering down inside of the tote, and leave the other end hanging off the edge. That's going to place the shirt at an incline. And like I mentioned earlier, the only color that I'm going to use on this shirt is Dyespin's Mindbender X or Mindbender Extreme. I'm going to place a pretty good amount of the Mindbender over the top of the ice. With this design, I don't like to have to come back and apply more dye. I want to apply the dye one time, allow it to split, and then let it process inside the shirt. So I'm going to add a pretty good amount of the Mindbender over the top of the ice. Then I'm going to add a little bit of additional dry soda ash over the top of the dye, then place this container aside and allow the ice to melt. So for this design, once the ice melts, I try to catch it real close to when the ice melts and make sure I don't have any chunks of dye left sitting on top of the shirt. It happens sometimes, and depending upon the color, sometimes it can make darker spots on the shirt. When I catch it soon enough right after the ice is melted, before the dye's had a lot of time to bond with the fabric, I will take some soda ash solution that I have inside of a spray bottle, spray those areas where the dye is kind of concentrated, not fully dissolved, and dissolve the dye. Once I do that, then I just leave the shirt alone and I allow the dye to go ahead and bond with the fabric. I included a couple photos of areas that I sprayed the soda ash solution on to dissolve the dye. After all the ice is melted, I went ahead and took the shirt out of the piece of vinyl guttering, placed it down inside of a plastic tote that has a metal rack in the bottom, and put the lid on the tote and placed the shirt outside to process in the heat. I allowed it to process for about 48 hours before I rinsed it out. I went ahead and rinsed the shirt like normal by rinsing it in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. I took the piece of kite string off the end of the shirt. Then I warmed the water up to hot and continued rinsing in hot water to try to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. I don't like to rinse for a long time. Instead, I prefer to soak my shirts by running some really hot water in my utility sink, adding a little bit of Blue Dawn dish soap to the water, placing the shirt inside, and then allowing it to soak. When the water cools off, I change it out and I continue that process until my water remains almost clear. Then I will place the shirt inside my washing machine along with some Dharma's professional textile detergent and wash the shirt using a hot water cycle. Okay, so the shirt has been washed, dried, and ironed, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? I think this one looks really cool. I like the color, and it does look different than it did when I used it in a gravity dye. So, like I said many times, I really think the incline twist is the way to get to see the colors that are in a dye. So you get all the cool color splits. So in this one, I'm getting lots of green, purple, blue, yellow, kind of a magenta color, little hints of orange, just a variety of colors. It's really pretty. I've included a photo of what the gravity ice dyed shirt using Mindbender X looks like and what this shirt looks like. And if you'll notice, there are some of the same colors, but the way the dye split with the gravity dye is very different than the way it split on this Incline ice dye. On the gravity dye, I had a lot of that kind of dark blue, navy-ish color, and I have hints of that on the Incline dye, but not near as many. And then I do get a lot of the greens on both of the shirts. I get some of the turquoisey colors on both of the shirts, and I also get some of that. It's kind of like a dark mauve, burgundy-ish type color, which is right along the center line on the gravity dye. And then I also get it on the Incline shirt. So like I said, a lot of the same colors are there. Just the way it split on the gravity dye was kind of odd. I think it's a cool effect, but it's not what I was expecting. That's the reason why I went ahead and made this shirt, is to see how this dye really splits on other designs. And I think these two shirts are a great example of how you can use the same dye color, but it can look totally different. So on the gravity dyed shirt, I don't have hardly any purple at all. But on the Incline twist shirt, I have a lot of purple. So the shirts look very different, even though they're the same exact dye color, and you get hints of, the same colors in both of the shirts. But I think that's one of the things that makes these ice dye colors so fun to work with, is you really honestly have no idea what you're going to get based upon what design and what technique you use. So that's something to keep in mind. You may see somebody who uses this color and you absolutely love their item, but then you don't get anything close to that when you use it on something yourself. So I have added all three of these Mindbender colors right up next to each other so you can see the difference between them. Mindbender A, B, and Mindbender X, which is extreme. According to Dyespin's website, they say they have 3 versions. They're similar but different. Mindbender B has double the amount of blue, and otherwise the formula for Mindbender A and B are the same. Mindbender Extreme has a slightly different formulation with more yellow. And that's pretty much what I'm finding with what I've done. The A and B, I did a comparison of those two shirts about a year ago, and so I just pulled up the photos that I had taken from the video for those two shirts, placed them in this one along with the Mindbender Extreme or Mindbender X. So, like I found when I compared A and B, B definitely does have more blue, which for my shirt ended up being more purple in the shirt. And then, of course, X is just totally different. The green is more prominent because of the addition of the yellow. And I don't know, it's different. The purple and magenta-ish type color are not as prominent on my X shirt as they are on the A and B. And I think when you add in that yellow making the green, it just kind of makes the other colors a little bit muddier. And I don't say that in a bad way, but it does kind of muddy up that magenta color some. So it kind of darkens the color. It makes it a deeper color than it is. It's not as bright as it is on the A and B. So for me personally, if I only wanted to buy a couple of these, I would stick with B and X. I like the B really well because I like the addition of the blue. I like the added loop of more purple in my dye color than the A. That's just a personal preference for me. I have A and I use it too, and I think it's a beautiful color. You would never really I hate to say you would never notice, but it wouldn't be as prominent if you didn't have them right up next to each other comparing. X, I do think X is a totally different color. I mean, I think it's beautiful, don't get me wrong. But if you're wanting the brightness of the pinky magenta colors, then I think A or B are my favorite. I think the pinky magenta colors turn a little bit more burgundy-ish on the X. But overall, I really like all three of the colors. Mindbender is one of my favorite of Dyespin's Dark Horse dies. But have you guys used Mindbender on projects? Have you used the Mindbender X? What do you think about it? How do you think it compares to the other two? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.